Um, Mouse and I met on the message board for a lesser-known horror punk band, and we dated for almost 2 years. I was 15 when the whole thing started. We never actually met in person. The entirety of the relationship was conducted via MySpace, LiveJournal, and AOL Instant Messenger, and on some level, I think that Mouse might be the only person I've ever really loved, which I guess this makes it a love story of sorts. To give you guys some context before we jump in, I had a difficult time as a teenager, as I imagine a lot of you also had a difficult time as a teenager, judging by the fact that no one in this room seems to have 20/20 vision, and also because you're at this show. As a teen, I felt like an outsider, and I looked like an outsider as well. Puberty hit me like a ton of bricks, and at 11, I went from 5 foot nothing to nearly 6 foot. I doubled my body weight, and I started to develop my patented chest hair. All of a sudden, I was different, and I didn't have any way to hide it. And at being 11, being different was the worst possible thing that had ever happened to anyone. So for the next couple years, I tried out all sorts of different coping mechanisms. I grew out my hair, and I began to experiment with makeup. I wrote unintelligible poetry, and I buried myself in fiction. At one point, after reading the book Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk, I even attempted to quell my existential frustrations by repeatedly punching myself in the face, which went about as well as you would imagine. I can talk about these things now, but at the time, it was all very overwhelming. I was confused, and I was sad, and I was pissed off constantly. And I honestly didn't know how I was going to make it through. There was one point where I decided that I was going to slash up my arms with disposable razors. And I was looking for, God, I'm not even sure what I was looking for, but I knew I needed something, anything to hold on to. The things that I found were music and this girl, Mouse. For me, Mouse was like the perfect woman. She was into literature and loud music. She cut her own hair, and she made questionable fashion decisions. She taught me about anarchy and veganism, but above all of this, she liked me. She actually liked me, which was such a revelation because at the time, I didn't really like myself. But here was this girl who was beautiful and who was intelligent, and she was saying that I was worth something, so that meant maybe, just maybe I was. The first time you fall for somebody, it's magic, right? It's like the Big Bang. There's nothing, there's nothing, there's nothing, and then bam, there's tons of shit that you couldn't even begin to explain, but somehow at the same time still kind of feels like home. After that first conversation, Mouse and I started talking every night, and we would talk for hours. We'd rock against Bush together. We would talk about collectivism. We'd share our favorite bands, and above all this, we'd talk about how lucky it was that the two of us had found each other, because the rest of the world didn't seem to get it, but we got it. I can't tell you how important that was for me at the time. It was really, really big. I wanted to know everything about this girl, so I'd ask questions. I wanted to know every minute detail, and at one point I asked her, what was the thing that inspired her the most? And she responded by sending me a link to a LiveJournal community, which was kind of like a proto-Tumblr. The community was filled with pictures. Some were high fashion, some were low fashion, some were high res, some were not. And the only thing that all these pictures had in common was that all the women in the pictures were really thin. They were extremely thin. They were thin to the point where you could see their collarbones. They were thin to the point where you could see their ribs or their hip bones. And I didn't understand at first. I asked Mouse why she had sent this to me, and she said that it was her inspiration. That's what she found inspiring. She also admitted to me in that conversation that the way she would be most attracted to me is if I was thin. And I thought about it, you know? I took it in, and it wasn't even a question. I loved this girl. I loved this girl more than anything in my life. So yeah, of course. Down the rabbit hole I go. There's a longer version of this that I could tell you, but the short version of it is in about 3 months, I lost about 40 pounds. I did this by jogging all the time. I did this by not eating, and when I did eat too much, what I would do is take 2 fingers and I'd stick them down my throat as far as they would go, and I would wiggle them. And if that didn't work, I would take a toothbrush and I would stick that down my throat as far as it would go, and I would poke it until I gagged and stuff came out. Staying here now, I'm 210 pounds. At the time, I was 155. My goal weight was 140, but I never actually got there. I'd like to be able to tell you guys that people realized I was sick, but they didn't. What I got for the weight loss was compliments. What I got was attention from people who never paid attention to me before. What I got actually was a short-term modeling gig with a company, a little fashion company that ran locally. What these people didn't know is that my hair had began to fall out in clumps. What the people didn't know is that blacking out kind of became a regular occurrence for me, and what they didn't know is that I had started to take sleeping pills, because when you're sleeping, you don't eat. All of this got pretty intense, but it also brought me closer to Mouse, because the rest of the world didn't understand, right? They never understood, but this girl understood. We understood each other. We were rejecting what they had to offer, and we couldn't really even tell you who they were. I still can't really tell you who they were, but fuck them is what we thought. The plan had always been that I was going to go visit Mouse in California. This was a stupid plan because I was 16 years old. But against all odds, I saved up $3 grand. $3 grand, a $7.25 an hour job to go and see her. And when I was going to go buy the plane tickets for me and my parents to go down to California where she lived, she told me that I shouldn't come. I shouldn't come because she couldn't explain to her mom that the two of us had been talking, and things just kind of fizzled after that. A couple of months later, I went to university. I passed out in one of my classes, and I was asked to talk to a counselor. A couple of months after that, Mouse was admitted to the hospital because she had complications with her liver. One of the last conversations we ever had was about how she finally wanted to get better. She wanted to get past this, but she couldn't because she couldn't afford the health care. Stupidly, we thought if we got married, she could come up here and she could have the Canadian healthcare, but that's really not how that works. I'd like to be able to wrap things up by saying that I got better, but it's not really true. I still think about it all the time. Every time I put food in my mouth, I think about what it's going to do to me. But I did learn coping mechanisms, and I picked up a gym membership. The other thing I also think about all the time is Mouse. I haven't talked to her in years, don't have the contact information. But I hope she's doing okay. And I'm really thankful for the time that we had together. I hope she's doing okay. But who knows? Thank you.